Hello, I'm doing a movie review, and the movie I want to review is Ghoulies II. Now, Ghoulies II came out in 1988, and this, of course, is a sequel to the film Ghoulies. Now, I have Ghoulies 2 on the same DVD as the first Ghoulies movie. Now, Ghoulies 2 is directed by Albert Band. Now, Albert Band is actually Charles Band's father. Now, Charles Band is also the executive producer for this movie. He was also the executive producer on the first movie. Now, most people would know Charles Band as the creator of Full Moon, which is the company that put out all the Puppet Master movies. But before Full Moon, Charles Band had a company called Empire, which was almost like a precursor for Full Moon in a way, and Empire put out this movie as well as the first movie, as well as Reanimator and From Beyond and Troll and a bunch of other movies. But as I said, this movie is actually directed by Charles Band's father. Now, I do like the first Ghoulies movie, but I personally like Ghoulies 2 a lot better. And truthfully, I think this might be the best film in the franchise. Like, I really do think this is a great movie, and you can easily watch this one without having to watch the first movie. And once again, I do think it's probably the best film in the Ghoulies series. Now, the film is a horror comedy, and it is a really funny movie, but there are also some really touching moments in this movie. Like, there are actually a lot of character moments in this movie, which are actually genuinely touching, and at some points even heartbreaking as well. Now, the plot of Ghoulies 2 is it begins where this priest is running away from this satanic cult, and he actually has a few of the ghoulies in a bag. Like, it turns out that this satanic cult, you're supposed to assume that they summoned the ghoulies from hell, and this priest has a few of them, and he intends to kill them, but then the ghoulies kill him. The ghoulies then stow away in this traveling haunted house called Satan's Den, which is run by this kid named Larry and his uncle Ned, who are carnival workers, and it's traveling to this carnival, and then they get set up, and basically the ghoulies are hiding away in this haunted house, and long story short, the ghoulies start attacking people who come into the haunted house, and later on in the movie they end up getting out and start attacking people in the carnival. Now, as I said, Ghoulies 2 is by far the best film in this franchise, and even though this is a cheesy horror comedy film, there are some genuinely emotional moments in this movie, and also some really touching moments as well, and there's also some really likable characters in this film. Like, the movie really shows you the relationship between Larry and his Uncle Ned, and Larry is a genuinely likable character, and the character of Uncle Ned in this movie is actually a really tragic character, and kind of a heartbreaking character as well, because in the movie you find out he was a magician years before the events of this movie, and in the film he's an alcoholic, and I guess you're supposed to assume that his alcoholism got to him, and he kind of just fell from grace, and once again, he's kind of a heartbreaking character, and he's also the first person to see the ghoulies, and when he starts telling people that he's seen little demons, nobody believes him, and there's a scene in this movie where Larry is yelling at him, and this character named Nigel says, "Larry, can't you see he's sick?" And it really is like it's a genuinely heartbreaking moment in the movie, and the character of Uncle Ned is, once again, a genuinely tragic character. Also, in this movie, you have the character of Sir Nigel, who's played by Phil Fondacaro, and the character of Nigel is a really likable character, and every time he's in the movie, he's always, like, quoting Shakespeare and stuff like that, and once again, he is a really likable character, and a really funny character, and he's played beautifully by Phil Fondacaro, who is an actor who I really like. I think he's a very underrated actor. Phil Fondacaro, he was also in movies like Troll. I think he also played one of the tall man's dwarfs in Phantasm 2, and he would go on to be in films like Bordello of Blood and George Romero's Land of the Dead. In the film, there's also a character named Nicole who ends up being Larry's love interest in the movie, and she's played by an actress named Kerry. Remsen, I think is how you say her last name, and she was also in Pumpkinhead, and she was also in A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. But the character of Nicole is a really likable character. But most of the characters in this movie are really likable. The only character in this movie who really is unlikable is the character of Hardin, who is the son of the owner of the carnival, and he is such a scumbag in this movie. He really is, but once again, he's kind of a villain in the movie, so he's supposed to be unlikable, but my god, he is such an evil bastard in this movie. William Butler also has a small role in this movie. William Butler, he was in a couple of movies, like, he was in Friday the 13th Part 7, he was in the Night of the Living Dead remake, and he was also in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, and William Butler actually went on to be a director. But once again, Ghoulies II is a really fun horror comedy film with some genuinely likable characters in it, and it's also relatively well acted and also has some really touching and, at points, even heartbreaking moments in it. And also the effects work in this movie for, like, the Ghoulies is actually really good, and the Ghoulies in this movie are given a lot more to do, because in the first film, the Ghoulies really only worked for the main villain. In this movie, the Ghoulies actually are the villains of the movie, and in the film, once again, the Ghoulies are used a lot more, which is something I really liked, because that's one of the problems I had with the first one, is even though I like the first one, in the first one, the Ghoulies really weren't given much to do, and they really underused the Ghoulies in the first movie, but here, once again, they've actually made the Ghoulies the main villains of the movie. And in the movie, they mostly use puppets for the Ghoulies, but there are also certain points where it's like stop motion, and the stop motion effects in this movie is actually really good. But once again, Ghoulies 2 is an awesome movie, and in my opinion, is the best film in the Ghoulies franchise. And personally, I recommend checking this one out before you check out any of the other films in the series, even though it's the second film in the series. So that was my review on Ghoulies 2, and my next movie review will be Ghoulies 3, Ghoulies Go to College.